Thanks for joining us today on another episode of Constructive Conversations, the podcast where we aim to bridge the gap in communications between contractors and customers. Joining us today is Mike Jasper. Mike is a renowned entrepreneur, venture capitalist, best-selling author, speaker, and coach. At the age of 21, Mike founded a precision machine shop, becoming a multimillionaire by 26. By 36, his company was a market leader in the semiconductor industry, boasting nearly $100 million in annual revenue. After selling his company, Mike's transitioned to venture capitalism, investing in some of the fastest growing companies in Silicon Valley. In this episode, we talk about different styles of coaching, dictatorship versus coaching style of management that helped Mike to grow his company. We talk about coaching in business versus personal life and why you should get a coach or a mentor, no matter what industry you're in. We talk about entrepreneurship and how that's the best vehicle for personal growth, among a bunch of other great topics. So you're going to enjoy this episode. So thanks so much for joining us.
Super happy to be here. Hopefully I can share some of my story and it'll help some of your audience make it to that next level.
Absolutely. Appreciate it. So can we take it back sort of to your early days of starting your company and what did that look like for you and how'd you get started in there?
Yeah, so it really started when I was about 8 years old. So my father owned a machine shop, which it turns out that I just love building things. So I would always ask him if I could go work, and in the summers he would bring me to work with him and I would be cleaning the machines, cleaning the floors. I was really good at it. And so I just every year as I got older and older, I guess when I was 10 years old, I was drilling holes on a drill press, and my dad was very competitive, and he would come up and he would always be like, "Don't let anyone ever outproduce you," And so anyway, I just grew up making it fun. I could take a really boring job and make it fun by making it a competition. And everyone else that was doing the same thing as me, I try to always beat them. So that's that. But then over the years, every summer, as I got more and more into it, I really found that I love building things, anything with my hands. And by the time I graduated high school, I was a journeyman machinist. So I didn't go to college right away. I just went right into the trades and worked for my dad. And I ended up running one half of his company by the time I was 20. And then it didn't take very long before my father got into drugs and alcohol and gambling, lost everything. And I had to go off on my own and start my own thing. And that's kind of where it all started. When I was 21, I started my first machine shop. I will say the first one only lasted a year and it failed not because I did anything wrong, but the economy was so bad. No one was paying their bills for like 120 days. Wow. And it was really hard to cash flow that when you're just starting. Mm-hmm. So I got out of it and I got into selling insurance because I thought I just need to learn how to sell so I can get better customers. And they paid you and trained you on selling. And then a couple years later, I started another machine shop. Actually, my father and I joined forces and we started a shop together. And with his experience and my experience, we were able to snowball this thing. And we grew at 100% per month. We doubled our revenue. We went from 100. We did that for 4 years. So we went from 100,000 a year the first year, which was a real struggle, to 100 million a year within 4 years. So that
is fast growth.
Really fast growth. Yeah.
What was that like managing that growth? Did that require you to develop at that rate?
Yeah. So what I learned young was surround yourself with really good people. So what happened on my first machine shop what I did right and really learned from it is my father wasn't around and he was rebuilding his life. He had really messed it up bad. And I was on my own and I knew that I didn't know everything and I knew that I wanted to get customers. So the first thing I did was I hired a business coach. So I remember he was so expensive too. They weren't really called coaches back then. They were called consultants. So he was a marketing consultant. And I just found him in the yellow pages because that was before the internet. And I remember him telling me he charged $500 an hour. And I was like, oh my God, I make 500 a week. So, so I would work all week and, like I had enough to pay my rent and I would save. And I said, well, I'm never going to figure this out fast enough to be successful unless I hire someone. So it literally only took about probably 6 weeks of meeting with this guy every week and giving him all the money I had made every week before he had taught me how to find customers, made a brochure, taught me how to present myself. And I remember how scary that was, walking in. I was 21 and I looked 16 because I looked really young when I was, I had no facial hair, just this super young look. And I remember people saying, you own the machine shop? I'm like, yeah. And I'd show my brochure. And so what was interesting is at that time, I didn't own any equipment. What I did is I leveraged what I had around me. So I was working for a machine shop and I made a deal with the owner. If I could use his machinists and his machine shop after work, I would set up everything and make everything and I would make some money and then I would put it all back how it was. And I convinced or talked the people in to help me. They worked for free for like 2 to 3 months. Yeah, I had like 10 people working for me for free. Well, it wasn't free. It was, I'll pay you when I get paid.
Yeah.
And they were happy to help me get started. They thought I had the energy and I was like, look, if I start this thing and it goes well, then I will make sure that you guys are taken care of in the long run. And the one thing I forgot to add was one of the reasons the owner let me do this is because he was 72 years old and he wanted to sell the company, and machine shops are really hard to sell. So I said, I'll buy your company. You just need to let me do this thing.
Yeah.
So I made a really good deal with them. But in the end, I couldn't buy it because the customers just weren't paying. And I did land some really nice named customers, but most of them were still pretty small and they were struggling. This was a recession in the late 80s, mid 80s, and it was pretty bad. Interest rates were crazy and all that stuff. So it just didn't quite work out, but I got so much experience. And the really big thing I learned from it was surround yourself with people that are better than you at everything and hire a mentor or a coach, someone like that too, that's done it before. And you can literally save a decade of struggle. And so I got out of that without losing any money. It was just, and I did get paid and I paid everybody and everyone was willing to jump back on board if I ever started something up again, but the timing just didn't feel right. So a couple of years later, started up again, and I did the same thing. I surrounded myself with the absolute best, and I think that's one of the fears that people have, because I did have this fear of, if I hire people that are really good, it's going to make me look bad, but I overcame that because I was just medium. I wasn't that great. I didn't have that many years of experience. So it was really interesting to be able to surround myself with people that are way better than me.
Yeah, that's great. And then to be able to manage them, even though they have more skills, and that sounds like, the qualities of a leader at a young age. You're able to, you must have had the vision to say, look, this is what I'm doing. Will you come help me, work with me on this? So you had that. Where did that come from? Sort of that leadership skill and drive. Is that
I think it was all the years in the business because I grew up around everyone was better than me since I was a little kid, but I always had an outgoing, friendly personality, but that didn't make me great at what I was doing. It's like, so I remember I had this really interesting experience where graduating high school, I came in and the machine shop was about, depending on the timing, 20 to 30 total employees.
Mhm.
And half of the company made round parts, which were like lathe parts, and half the company made milling square parts. And so I grew up specialized in the round parts. And so in the lathe department. So as soon as I graduated, within a week, I was working in the lathe department. The leader of the lathe department quit.
Mhm.
Somehow he blamed it on me. He thought I was going to take over. And this guy was one of the best in the industry. I remember my father talking about how good this guy was and how much I was going to learn from him. And then he quit because he thought that I was going to take over and he wasn't going to work for some little kid. And of course, this was all in his mind,
Yeah.
but it ended up being scary. But at the same time, since I had worked in the company, most of the work was repeat work. So I could take everything that he had done and just use it. And so I was able to set up everything and run it and then have people operate it once I set it up. So I could do it. I was slower than that other guy. And where my real weaknesses were was when a new job would come in, I didn't know what to do.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
I would have to learn how to work with people that were better than me in that department. So I think there's something around that where my life depended on it, right? My survival depended on working with people. And what I learned from it was, and I was watching what worked and didn't work over the years. And there was really two management styles. One is more of a dictator, and the dictator, they're like a know-it-all. Then they're good. They're usually really good at what they do. And they just don't want to be slow. So they're just like, do this, do that, do this, do that. But the problem I saw was when they left the room, no one knew what to do. And actually, my father was a dictator style, and he could only get his company up to 30 people and barely keep it there before it would start to fall apart because everyone he would hire would just they were following his direction on doing.
Yeah, he had to directly manage everyone, and there's only so much capacity one person could have, right?
Yeah, and plus he was doing sales, so he wasn't there all the time, and then he'd come in and yell at people because they did it wrong. And so that didn't work for me. And naturally for me, what I did is I gravitated to working with the people that were better. And then what I would do is I would ask them, how are you going to make this? And then what happened was people all from the other side of the company started to want to work for me because working for me let them have their way, because there's more than one way to make any part.
Mhm.
And the goal was, I started saying, well, I have a certain amount of time that I got paid to do this job. So if you can do it in this certain amount of time, you can do it any way that you want. And so everyone, if there was an opening, people were all coming to work for me because they got to do it their own way. And I found that was the way to go. And it took all the pressure off of me. And I could manage a lot more people that way as the company grew. And the really good people, when you manage them that way, they don't quit. And so as I was growing the company and we would promote from within and kind of bring people in at the bottom, and then we would grow them and train them on the way up. And early on, I actually hired a life coach from Tony Robbins. And I was amazed at how much I learned from that style. And I noticed that it was very similar to what I learned about sales. So one of the secrets in sales is a lot of people think that in sales, you need to be talking a lot, but really you want to be listening. So you ask questions and let them talk. And that makes sales really easy. You get to learn exactly what they want. If they say they need something, then you say, if I can do that, do you want to get started? And it'd be like, yeah, okay, great. So I kind of incorporated sales and life coaching into management of my company. And over 10 years, I only had 2 people quit. And that wasn't because they hated the company. It was because they had a lifestyle change. They didn't want to live in the city anymore. They actually got a machinist job where they could live in the mountains, and they love the mountains. And I was just like, I can't compete with that. It's like, I can't argue with it because I want to be there too.
Yeah, that's a great track record. Yeah. So clearly people like that management style. So you're doing it right.
And so, and I've had many companies over the years. And when I go in and I work with managers and owners, the first thing I do is I look at their style and what they're doing. And I usually find that they're either trying to do, if they're struggling, they're either trying to do too many things and not focus on one thing, or their management style limits them because they're wanting to micromanage it to the level of they can only grow to, usually a micromanager type person can handle about 15 people max. And if they're really good, it can be more, but it starts to fall apart after that. So I start teaching them, or either I teach them life coaching skills or recommend hire a life coach.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll learn in 6 weeks, you'll learn what you need to learn from life coaching. And you'll get some moments to go, wow, this really worked for me. I can't believe it. I'm going to use this. And what I would do is work with my people and say, I would ask them, what are your goals outside of the company? What are your goals inside the company? Like I had many people that started off cleaning parts and then ended up running machines and becoming a full-blown journeyman machinist over time, because I would ask them, what do you want? And they would say, I want to run that machine over there. I'd be like, okay, we're going to make a plan to get you over there. And I mean, who wouldn't want to work for a company that helps you reach your goals?
Yeah. So you have that conversation at the outset, so they know, within this company, there's space for me to grow and to get to the place they want to be. 2 things you mentioned you look for. You'll see, do they have the dictator style of management? What would you call the other one, which is like your approach?
I call it a coaching style.
Coaching style. Yeah. So do you find, can the owner, whoever's running the company, can they shift from a dictator style?
That's a good question. Most of them really struggle with it. Most of them really struggle. But yeah, it's pretty tough. But it really depends on what your goals are. Like a lot of people, they like their little company at 10 or 15 people, and or even smaller, and they might complain about it, but they feel safe in that space. And it's a big leap to go bigger and to release some of that. And the other way it can be done is you don't have to be, you can do it, but it's baby steps. It's like there might be a key person that you practice with one person. It's like, oh, okay, that really worked. And then what usually happens is they'll have me coach their closest people to turn them into coaches, because that is usually the best way, because the dictator style person can handle, like, let's call it, I said up to 15, but really let's call it 7 people, but that's all the departments they really need to talk to. And if they have good managers that are trained up in the coaching style, they're going to be fine. Yeah. So I don't know that the dictator is really going to change, but he's going to recognize the benefits of it, and they'll start wanting to train the people around them. And that's when your company can grow.
Yeah. So basically, if they can surround themselves with coaching style people, then they can do the management, and it'll still work. It'll still allow for growth.
Yeah, exactly. But usually the founders are pretty set in their ways, and they're usually good at what they do. And so then they feel safe, in that space. But if they are open to do some coaching themselves and they get some benefit from it, like they have some moments, that's where it really starts to change. I've worked with some where they didn't want any coaching, but they said, "Hey, just fix my team." Like they thought the team was broken. This is almost
Right.
all the time. And so I'll say, "Okay, great." And I can do it and it does help, but it breaks down as soon as I leave because now there's not a middleman helping. If the leader isn't on board with that style, they don't have to be on 100%, but they have to understand what they're doing that breaks it down, so they stop breaking it down.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes so much easier. Actually, that's the beauty, is once you see that instead of telling people what to do, you ask them how they would do it. And then like, even if they're going to not get it done quite as fast, it's okay, because now they own it and they're going to try to make it work because their ego's on the line.
Uh-huh.
So sometimes they'll work overtime and over the weekend and not charge you because their ego's on the line and they wanted to get it done by that certain time. So they're going to make sure it gets done. Whereas if you're telling them what to do, oh yeah, you told me what to do, I was just doing it your way. And now it's all on me. If I'm the owner and the lead, I like to put it all on other people.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like teaching someone to fish. So then once they've taken ownership, they've done it themselves. Now they don't have to come to you every time and say, "Oh, what do I do now?"
Yeah, and if they get lost or they're struggling, they'll come and they'll say, "Hey, that's the thing. That if their ego is on the line and their pride is on the line, they're going to ask other people. They're going to get it done." It was amazing, because to give you an example of how effective a coaching style of management is, when I was growing that company at 100% per month, that means if we were doing 10,000 a month, then we went to 20, and then we went to 40, and then we went to 80. That's really hard to do. There was other things, even how do you have enough money to do that, right? I had to negotiate deals with my main customer that was making me grow that fast, and have them pay me in 7 days. I said, "I need you to pay me in 7 days because I got to pay everyone else."
Huh?
And so I gave them a 2% discount. I said, "Look, I'll give you a 2% discount, but you got to pay me in 7 days." And they thought that was great. So anyway, that's how I financed the growth without having bank loans or debt or anything.
Wow, that's very smart. And then, so you grew into like semiconductor industry. So this is your big customer is fueling your growth. And like, so when that industry was booming.
Yeah, a big customer was Applied Materials.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started with them, this was in the early 90s. So before, the internet was 2000-ish, right? So we grew. Yeah, so that's what happened, is got in, and it took a year for me to get in, right? Because they're not an easy customer to get in. But if you keep showing up, "Hey, I got some donuts, got my card here," and just leave some donuts, and pretty soon something happened where two managers were out and someone needed a certain part done, and they're like, "Well, let's give this guy a shot," because it wasn't easy for them to get that one part done.
Mm-hmm.
And they gave me this print, and I looked at it, and it had a special material called molybdenum. And molybdenum is really, really hard to machine. It's like when it heats up, it actually contracts instead of expands.
Wow.
And I really had never even heard of it before, but so what I told them is, "Yeah, I specialize in that." Of course.
Yeah.
They're like, "No one else would even look at it or bid it." And I'm like, "Great." So then I looked at it and I asked everyone in my shop, and they were like, "I don't know how to do that." And then the material was so expensive. Each part was $10,000 for just a little. I think they ordered 2 of them. And at the time, my company was so small, I didn't have $20,000.
Uh-huh.
That was the material I needed. So I'm like, "How am I going to pull this off?" So I had to hire another company in New York to make it, because they actually did specialize in this.
Mm-hmm.
And they gave me 30 days to pay them. But at the time I hadn't negotiated this deal yet. But anyway, it worked out to where I was able to borrow some money from a friend, to buy the material and send it to that company. And then they made the parts. And then I got paid. And it was a very profitable job, which gave me enough money when they ordered them again. I had the money. And then it kind of grew from that. And I don't know how I got off onto that story.
Yeah.
But
No, that's great. Yeah. And that progressed into the growth and with that big customer in semiconductors. And then can we skip ahead to your exit? What did that look like? And actually, even before then, did you have a vision for that growth at the outset? Did you say, I want to be at this level?
No.
What was your mindset at that time?
Yeah, I did not want to be at that level.
Huh.
That was the absolute, when I got the company started, I was like most people, I want to make a couple $100,000 a year, and enjoy my life. The problem is my customer came to me and said, well, and at the time I had made it, let's say a couple years in, and I was so happy. I was making about $50,000 a month. And I thought, this is it. This is all I ever need to do. I'm so happy. And everyone was so good in my little shop. And then my customer came in and said, well, we have 500 machine shops and we have to cut it down to 200. So you're going to have to take on a lot more work, or we're just going to have to not do business with you. But I had delivered everything on time. I had never had a reject. And I was their vendor of the year that year. And they were giving me a chance. And I said, all right. So it was basically grow or die.
Yeah.
And so I said, all right, I'll grow. So I was in a 6,000 square foot building, and my next building was 80,000 square feet. And that's a big jump.
Yeah.
I would get exhausted just walking across it.
That's a big jump.
Yeah. So, and then we had absolutely the best equipment. And so what I did is we ended up buying these new machines that had just come out, where they would load with a robot. You'd buy, like, we had 4 of them, and there was a railroad tracks in front of them. And it was a robot that would load the parts. You would put material on one end. It would go down to each machine, depending on the job. And it could run maybe 20, 30 different jobs on one machine. It had all the tooling and everything. And so I had just spent a couple $1 million on this whole system, which was all loans. Mm-hmm. And I remember right as I got that set up, they said, hey, my customer called and said, just want to let you know, we're going in a meeting to decide if we're going to keep you as a customer or not. And I'm like, you guys told me to grow.
Wow. And quite the call to get.
If you pull out, I'm bankrupt. Like, I am so bankrupt. I will be on food stamps. And so anyway, they had this vote to keep us or not. And we stayed on by 1 vote. And so luckily he called me before the meeting to let me know, so I could give them all the ammo of why they should keep us. And we were their vendor of the year at that point, a couple years in a row. And we had just invested all this money and got the new building. We were supporting their plan. And so anyway, it did work out. But no, I never wanted to be big. By the time I sold the company, we had 300 to 350 people. And that was, it kind of is weird because you don't know everyone. I'm walking around, I didn't know everyone's name.
Yeah.
And, so I liked it better when it was small and everyone was just high-fiving all the time. And, life was great. We tried to do the barbecue thing and all of that, but people would just rather have the money. So it's like, all right, we'll give you bonuses, So, yeah. So what else you asked about? Did I plan to go there? That is no. And what I learned from that in business and in life is you can have a goal, but keep it a loose goal. Don't say I'm going to be at this amount. Because you're not in control of how much money you're going to make or whatever size. What you are in control of is what you do every day and the pattern that you put together. And is that pattern, is the day that you put together structured to get you to the next level? And that was what I was really good at, is my goal was to help get other people to their next level, which brought the whole company up. And then look at the opportunities that come your way. So yeah, you just got to look for, is that without being so tied to a direction, be flexible, have goals, and be working on how do I become the person I want to be 5 years from now or 10 years from now, but be open to opportunities that come in, because if I was too rigid, none of that would happen.
Yeah, I really like what you said there. So you're in control of the pattern that you set every day, your own actions, and then you can make improvements on that and stay flexible, open to opportunities. And obviously you had a pattern that works, like we talked about your coaching style that was scalable, and when the opportunity was there, that allowed you to grow to that bigger level. So that's great. That's great advice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. And then what was the exit like from a company that size?
So the exit it wasn't huge because it's a manufacturing business. I sold it for $55 million, but I mean, I could live on that. And then I took that to another level. But it's the beauty of the machine shop business was we got 7-year contracts. So the certain parts that we did, part of negotiating our deal was I need contracts to be able to buy machines, right? To get loans.
Yeah, it's
So
big investments.
exactly. So they need to know that I'm locked in. I have a customer that's going to pay me every month. That doesn't mean they're going to live up to their agreement, because when things go bad, they don't live up to their agreements and there's nothing you can do about it. But they give you the contract, and then the contract, you are able to leverage that into growth and leverage on the loan side. And for us, we leased a lot of machines. But yeah, I ended up selling that company to a big multi-billion-dollar French company because they wanted to come in. It's called Saint-Gobain. And Saint-Gobain came in and they wanted to be in the semiconductor industry. So they wanted our contracts. So that's really was the value of my company, was getting contracts. So if any of your audience is in an industry where it's possible to get contracts, even if they're smaller ones, like, hey, we're going to use you, so much per year. If you can get contracts in your business, that's the goal, because that's the real value, what you can sell. Otherwise, we got 5 times our profit. So we made 10 million a year in profit. So and so manufacturing, that's really low multiple for the world out there. But the reality is in manufacturing, that's pretty high. Without contracts, it's like 2x. So that's a big deal there. And then I got paid cash with, as long as the contract stayed in place. I think 5 million of the 55 got paid out over the next couple of years. They just had to make sure that they were going to get paid from those contracts, and that there was no fraud, because if they had to sue me, they wanted that extra 5 million to come back and come after me. But actually, that was a great exit for me.
Yeah, nice. And now fast forward. Can you tell me about what you're doing now?
Yeah, so I will say the next thing that happened after that is I started working with people that were very wealthy, billionaires. I had been surrounding myself with great people. So then I started investing in companies where my partners were really, really good at what they did. So I just wanted to share this with your audience, is where it ends up going. The best of the best in business are really fascinating, because they end up knowing when they start a company, like they already know who they're going to sell it to and how much they're going to sell it for. 3 potential buyers. And this was all foreign to me, that you could be this precise in what you're doing. Now, it doesn't work 100% of the time, but that's when they go in, that's their whole vision. They don't go in saying, oh, I just want to make a living and make my 100 grand a year. They're like, nah, need to make at least 100 million on this deal. So I got to solve a big problem for a big company. And I thought that was really fascinating to work with people like that and sit in those meetings. And so The reason I think that's interesting at any level is because to know, for me, on being an entrepreneur it's about personal growth. It's everything that we learn along the way. We start off like struggling to make 100 grand a year or just keep the doors open, right? My first year, I paid myself minimum wage. I was paying everyone around me more than I was paying myself, but I knew in the end it would work out. Or I had faith that it would.
Yeah.
And so just knowing that this is a personal growth journey. Whereas if we just work for someone else, we can kind of be done with our journey. You can get a good union job or a good job that pays the bills and be done. Or sometimes we get a job that pays too much. It's like, there's no way I can quit this job. I'm doing too well. I hate the job. I hate going to work, but I'm making so much money. But it's kind of ending your personal growth. So I look at being an entrepreneur as, how far can I take this? And there's been many years actually, because after I sold the company and I was doing these startups, I'm talking from my experience where I stopped growing. It was like I would invest, some of them would do great, some of them would be 100% loss. But I wasn't running it. I wasn't in there making it happen, and my growth completely stopped. And I actually, it took me longer than most to get bored. It took me like a good 10 years to really get bored, because I was buying all the things you could do, have all the fun you could possibly have. But in the end, if you're not growing, that stuff becomes boring. I know it sounds ridiculous, but like, you can only ride so many mountain bike paths, or, you're driving a boat, and after a while you're like, it's okay, this is really fun, but now it's not fun because I've been driving it up and down the coast or in the bay and to lakes, and I've done it all, but I'm not growing. So that's kind of where I am now, is I'm back in this growth phase and helping other people grow their companies. And I know I had been helping parents and helping younger entrepreneurs. That was usually parents where they were struggling with their teens. And what I found was, if you lose your vision or you don't have a big dream to shoot for, you go off the rails, especially when you're young. I did. There was a point where I wasn't going towards business. I was just going the wrong direction, hanging out with the wrong people, and my life could have been totally different. And I remember one day saying, I wonder if I really tried what I could do. And that was kind of the pivotal moment where I'm going to go for it. And so I'm just, with your audience, you're talking about people that are trying to grow, and what is that about? I just want to let them know that this is the best life you can have, even if the company doesn't work. I don't call it a failure. I call it a learning experience. And everything you learn from that, you bring to the next thing. And don't stop, because that's the juice in life, is making that work.
Yeah. So I could translate that to saying, you're running, a business that fails is going to give you more growth and more, maybe even satisfaction or development than, driving a boat up and down the coast.
Yeah. It's absolutely 100%. It keeps life exciting. And if you fail, the problem is people go, oh man, I failed, instead of, I learned what doesn't work. And I always like to start with, what do I think is going to work? And then adjust. Even airplanes that are going from here to Hawaii, they're never perfectly on track. They're always off track, and they're always correcting. They're always doing that. So that's what we have to do. And then what you do is you try to get a mentor that has done something like what you're doing. It doesn't have to be exactly the same, but somewhere, at least in business, that has, helped people get to where you want to go. And you'll skip so many bumps. And yeah, it's so much different to do that and then try to make it up on your own. So I highly recommend a life coach or a business coach to help figure out, they kind of start with a life coach where they help figure out and design a life that you want. And then you go, okay, what's the vehicle? Now that here's the lifestyle and you can visualize how you want your life. How do I want to get there? And then once you pick that business, or maybe the business coach helps you pick that business, and does that fit the lifestyle that I want to have? Because a lot of people now are choosing lifestyles where they can travel. It's like, I would want to be able to do this on the road, or, so that might be more of a sales job. A sales job, you can be anywhere and sell. And then, hey, be surfing in Bali every day. In fact, I just got back from Bali, and I met a bunch of young 20-year-olds, from 25 younger, and they're all doing sales jobs and surfing half the day. And it's like crazy. I was like, wow, these guys are geniuses.
Yeah, they got that figured out. Somebody helped them come up with a good plan.
Exactly. It's like, okay, we didn't have the technology back then when I was that young, but also having a place and like a construction company or, a bricks and mortar type thing is super rewarding, because you're building a team and you're all there and you feel like you're doing this together.
Mm-hmm.
And one more thing I wanted to bring up about coaching that I learned was so valuable for me was, a lot of times when we go into business, we want a partner, and partners can be good because they take half the burden. Maybe they bring in half the money, and hopefully they're totally different from you. So if you're a salesy kind of guy, you don't want another salesy guy. You want a guy that likes to get stuff done, more of an operations guy. That's a great team. But a lot of times you don't need to have a partner and give away half of your profit. What you really want is someone that's like a mentor that you can bounce ideas off of, and they'll keep you on track, and you feel like you have someone on your side. You might pay them a lot. I still have coaches that I pay. I think this year I'll pay $100,000 a year in coaching, because I'm still growing, and there's people out there that still make a lot more money than me. And so when I wrote my book, I had a coach because I didn't know how to write a book. When I do a lot of real estate investing now. So I have a high-end real estate coach that, I've done 20 flips myself, maybe more than that, and built homes from the ground up. And I could say, I know what I'm doing. I still have a coach that he builds skyscrapers. It's like, so, it's like, okay, they're level, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm just throwing it out there so people know that even when you get there and you're, the other thing that was really interesting was a book that someone introduced to me. He was a billionaire, and he introduced me to this book. It was called The $1 Trillion Coach. So the $1 Trillion Coach, oh boy, can't remember his name right now. It'll come to me in a minute. He was the coach for Steve Jobs, all of the Google execs, especially the founders, Facebook founders, and Sandra, I can't remember her last name. She was the COO that ran Facebook, and he coached all of these people. And so he became known as the $1 Trillion Coach, because all these companies are almost all of them worth $1 trillion. Some of them like 3 trillion now. But I thought that was really interesting that the best of the best had coaches. So in the blue collar world, you don't see it very often. And so I'm trying to spread that word to people that, the people that we look up to and we see on the news, and they're the best of the best running these giant companies, they all have coaches. And why not us? It'll get us from where we are up to that next level much faster.
Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah, especially in the blue collar world, for the people who don't know that. Everyone needs coaches. I looked it up here. Bill Campbell.
Yeah.
Coach.
Yeah. That's great. For me, that was super motivating, because this was 20 years ago when I was, considering coaches and stuff. And that wasn't, Tony Robbins was on TV, and he was like the only name that I really knew. And I took everything that he sells. I've been trained on all of his stuff, and even he has like a coach training program. And I went through that as well as other things. And it's just that for me, it was life changing because now I can literally sit down with someone who's blocked and stuck, and I can help them change their life if they really want to,
Mhm.
Most people are stuck and they like being stuck.
Yeah, like you
And
said,
so it's
it's
like,
comfortable and safe.
yeah, and it's like, hey, I'm here. At least you know where I am, or that this is a way to get unstuck. If you don't want to work with me, work with somebody. Because it really, for me, it changed my life. And
Mhm.
you can use those same tools in your family with your kids. Like I went through a period, even though I was a coach at work, I went through a period where my kids, or my son, I should say, was really struggling. And I was able to use coaching tools, turn it around. I found that I was more of a dictator at home, like, oh, you should be doing this. And he would ask me, what should I do? And then I would tell him. And then what I learned was every time we tell someone, not just our kid, but an employee, every time we tell them what to do, we're actually limiting their growth and solving the problem for them. We're not letting them solve the problem. So we can help guide them with questions is a better way to answer their questions. Really, like how would you do that? What are three ways that you would solve that problem? And
Mhm.
and then out of those three, which way do you think we should try first? And make it okay to fail. Let's try this one first and see where it goes and let them learn. So these tools are not just for work. I mean, it really, now my son, he is an entrepreneur. He's 24 and he just started a demo company. So they do demolition and hauling. And he started with pressure washing because I didn't give him money. I have money. And when I've given him money in the past for things, it just ruined him. It was, and he felt like I gave it to him. He didn't earn it. So I told him, I can't give you money going forward, but
Huh?
I can coach you. And so anyway, he lets me coach him. We meet at least once a week. And he had a power washing business and now they're into hauling and demo. And they just hired their first guy that has 30 years experience. Because I told them, you need to get someone around you that knows their stuff. And now you can say, and you can advertise, we have 30 years experience instead of saying we have 3 months experience.
Yeah, yeah, that's very good advice.
Yeah.
Like
So he's
like you
off
said at
and
the beginning.
rolling. And I think
Uh-huh.
he's making like $10,000 a week. He's only been in business for 3 months.
Wow.
So it's like, that's just the
Great.
beginning because next month he's booked. He's got one pool and stuff that he's taken out, and it's like $100,000, and that'll take him a week. So I mean, this thing's going to snowball really fast because
Mhm.
he's surrounding himself with really good people.
Yeah, and he's got a great coach.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. He's.
Uh,
I hope. I hope I don't run him into
yeah,
the ground.
yeah, it sounds like it from his results. That's
Yeah,
that's awesome. And then
yeah.
we'll get towards the end here. One more question. What are you looking forward to in the future? So what do you have coming up that's exciting?
Yeah. So the biggest thing I have going right now is I was an early investor in a company called the Diamond Foundry.
Mhm.
So it was three guys when I invested, and now they're like the largest lab grown diamond company in the world. And
Mhm.
so very excited about that. We're building a $250 million facility in Spain, or actually the facility is bigger and more expensive than that, but Spain gave us 250 million to build it there.
Wow.
And that's the what's funny is it started off, I thought it was going to be cutting tools for the like dirty diamonds, but their
Uh-huh.
technology got so good that it turned into jewelry. Now the jewelry is the market leader. They make like $500 million a year or some crazy number in jewelry. And, but it turns out that diamond is one of the best like a heat sink.
Mhm.
And we bond that to computer chips. So like a credit card, we can make our diamonds any shape and we just bond it to it. We working with NVIDIA right now, making their computer chips. So when you put a heat sink on the chip, it levels out the heat. So there's no hot spots.
Mhm.
And now they can run 3 times faster and have no heat problems that break down the chip. So that's my like, that'll be a big home run when that'll
Yeah,
sell in the
that's
next few
huge.
years.
Huge
Yeah.
opportunity there. Yeah, some
Yeah.
diamond cooling, and so next gen of cards is going to be diamond cooled. That's very
Yeah.
cool.
And the next thing is they're already working on it and have it working, but it's they haven't had the whole process. But diamond computer chips are like 20,000 times faster than silicon. So they're making the next computer chips.
Wow.
So I started off in the machine shop business making computer chip or the machines that make computer chips, and we're making the we're making the computer chips. So it's kind of weird. I didn't plan it that way. Like I told you, I didn't even know that was going to go that way, but it was a good opportunity that I felt it was worth the risk. And now I just own a small percentage of the company. I own like 1% of it, but 1% or even less, a little less than that. But that's still a big number when
Oh yeah.
these companies are worth many billions.
Yeah.
So
Very exciting. Yeah.
that's exciting. The other thing that's exciting for me that I'm personally working on is I think I'm transitioning back into coaching for businesses because I've had so much fun coaching my son and his partner on their business. And potentially they might even bring me in and I might just help them snowball this thing into just being just a giant company because I'm just having so much fun with them on it. So could be coaching or it could just help my son grow this giant company. Hey man, I'll drive trucks for you, whatever you want.
Yeah, no, that's great to get to work with your son.
Yeah, definitely. But if anyone in your audience wants to work with me, we'll figure that out. But it's really my main message is if it's not me, that is like finding a mentor is really important.
Yeah, great message. So Mike, where can people reach you? Can you share your website?
Yeah, my website is mike-jasper.com. I'll just put out my email. So if you want to reach me, just email me at mikejasper430@gmail.com.
Perfect. Thanks. We'll have that in the show notes and people can reach out through your website. Mike, thanks so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom. I really appreciate it. It's great to have you.
It was great to be here, and hopefully it's a little entertaining for people and learn something.
Definitely. Thanks again.
All right. Thank you.